Okay, how does this sound?
That sounds good.
Okay.
Yep.
We're back with the laptop.
Oh yeah. Nadine said she's not going to be on tonight. She has something for her son's band, like awards.
Okay. Well, I've actually hit the record button, so I will post this YouTube after it does whatever it does when we get through.
Awesome.
I have a question while we're waiting.
Go ahead, Jess.
Okay, so I'm not sure how to read the grades, but like my grade says it's 0 out of 4, but she said that we got full credit for it. So do I just ignore that?
Okay. Are we talking about the EVA?
Yeah.
Yeah, it says week 1 EVA, and it says graded, but it says 0 out of 4, but your comment says points already given.
I had already issued, I had moved those somewhere else. You've gotten the 4 points for that. Everybody.
Okay.
Yeah. Just
So
check.
will we track them there, or will we track them somewhere else?
Do what?
Like, will we follow, like I always look at this grade thing for my grade, so will I follow that? Okay.
Look left to right, and that's the only thing at this point that you would have done that would have had 4 points.
Right, well, it's a 0 out of 4, is that correct?
Yes, but look on that whole spreadsheet left to right and be sure that 4 points is somewhere on that screen, because I gave it to you.
Mine's the same thing, and at the top for total, it says I have 2 out of 6 points.
Okay, yeah, that'd be mine.
I'll just go back.
About it.
I'll go back. Let me add that to my list of things to do. Check the EVA scores. Okay. All right. One of you asked a question, and I think it might have been Nicole.
Oh, I'm here.
Okay. Did you ask the question about uploading when y'all get to the point about uploading stuff for your peer review and the written peer reviews and the YouTube peer reviews? Was that you who asked that question?
No, it wasn't me.
Okay. Has anybody messed with that yet? I don't think you have, and here's what I want to tell you up front. I had to put those 4 written peer reviews and the 4 video YouTube reviews somewhere. So I dumped them all in week 1 and week 2. I'm going to take those down and add each one in a separate week. So at the end of week 11, you'll have one. At the end of week 12, you'll have one. And I will run that on out so you have 8 additional weeks. Don't panic. I'm just giving you a place to load those 8 documents. 4 will be written peer reviews using the same form that you used last semester in 601. And 4 will be the others. Where you get together, y'all have a Zoom session, and then y'all can take turns posting that video up onto YouTube, and then you will post a link when you submit the document so I can see that y'all did have that video and whatever. Does that make sense? Y'all did do that in 601, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Just checking. Now, here's something that one of you submitted, and I don't know that any of the others caught it today. And Jeff, I'm glad you're here because this will be something you will need to do plus Dante. There's a process that everybody who goes through the university, you either have to have your research project approved, or, and that would be for like a dissertation with 5 parts as you work on your doctorate. But as you work on your master's and you do research, you have to complete a process that is listed in week 2 called city training. Has anybody uncovered that little nugget yet? Okay.
Yes.
It's in
I've
week.
seen it.
Okay. I'm going to apologize from the very beginning. In my opinion, it is something that they dug up from the 50s and the 60s and the 70s that involves some of the crazy stuff you will ever read or study. But for some reason, it is a univocal process, and it stands for, double check, Collaborative Institutional Training Initiative, CITI. What you basically do is you'll read a paragraph of something, and then you'll answer some questions. Now, here's the interesting thing. It is in week 2, and it's the one that we've loaded up that has a total of 15 weeks, but it is in week 2. And what the process involves, you read a paragraph, and then you answer the questions, and it tells you what your grade is. The good part is, after you take the test and it's graded, if you don't pass, I think the passing is either a 75% or an 80%, you get to retake the test. Now, after about the second or third time, they're going to scramble in that process and give you some different questions. It's stuff from studying about prisoners in state prisons. It's stuff about healthcare and people working in factories. I really don't see the connection between what you're doing and your school and this city training, but it is the portal that allows you to gain access and do institutional research. Now, the good thing about it is this. When you log in and you follow the instructions under city training, it tells you exactly what to do, that you sign up under Gardner Webb, and you use your student ID number. Another good thing is, once you pass all of the parts, it sends that score to Gardner Webb. Just to be on the safe side, every time you complete a module, or you can wait till you have done all of them and it will say passed and some kind of number, I would print that off and just hang on to it or put it on a thumb drive or something in case there's a glitch down the road. But that will need to be completed sometime in 602. Again, you can find that, I think it's around page 9 in your handbook, the 602 syllabus for summer of 2017. It's called City Training. Instead of you going through a peer review process where you present your proposal, this is supposedly the ticket that gets you into the realm of doing academic research. I want you to look at that, and we will come back and rediscuss it next Tuesday. They automatically send your grade to Gardner Webb, so when they do a curriculum audit at the end of every course or at the end of all 5 of your courses, in order for you to graduate, that will be one of the things they look for. So check out that. There's a hot link for you to go to, but I think for the most part, you read the paragraph, you answer some questions. If you miss a question, you get to go back and take it again. To me, it's a total disconnect. I don't have a horse in that race. Yes, who is this?
This is Kevin McRae. Is there a limit to how many times you take it? I know that they, like you said, they scramble the questions, but will they lock you out after a certain amount of time?
No, sir. Now,
all right.
No, you've got unlimited trips to that well. So what I would do is, And I know this might sound a little, I don't know how well you read and can answer questions, or if you have a split screen on your computer. But I think on the third time they scramble the questions, and very seldom do they put up new questions. If they do, it would be after the third or fourth time. But for the most part, they just move the questions around. So
Gotcha.
it's unlimited, but it's something they will look for in the graduate office. Okay, now some of you may be having trouble finding your textbooks. I don't know where you've looked, but I hopped around on eBay yesterday and Amazon or half.com. They've got them ready to go. So if you haven't picked yours up, I would suggest you seek an alternative method if you can. And for the rest of you, I need to tell you that some of you in this group are moving through those chapter questions rather quickly. And typically when you put up those questions in the right spot, my answer will be thank you. And then I will tell you how many out of 10 that you got correct. And for the most, in fact, for everyone that has worked on that activity, it's been all 10 out of 10 correct. So keep doing that. I know these team leaders have gotten together and your teams have been set with 4 on each, and you're starting to work on your AppTel and the different parts. I believe there are only 4 tasks in the AppTel that you have to complete this semester. So it probably would be a good idea to get busy into that and start critiquing each other's written work as we do that. All right, let's talk. What else? I've got one more thing to talk about, some of the highlights in chapter 1 and 2. But I thought since you popped up with the questions about the EVA grades, I'm going to add that. What else? Oh, and I'm going to move the Zoom and the written stuff. And what I will do is put each one on a different week. So you'll have 8 more weeks of stuff where to load this stuff. Okay, what else you got? Before I talk about the highlights out of chapter 1 and 2, and then I want to understand how the beginnings of this research product and process ties to your work at your school. Any questions so far? None? Okay. Now, somehow or another, when you were doing your APSL, and correct me if I'm wrong, you got involved with your PLC. You did some stuff about PLC and who was the godfather of PLC work and all that stuff. And then you developed a group and you studied with them and you came out with a couple of things that stood out in your line of work. Now, Jeff, I know and remember from you in 603, being a central office person, you worked with Jeff Hamilton. You figured out how to manipulate that process where you still could find a problem that existed. Is that still correct? Yeah.
I don't know about Jeff Hamilton, but
no, what did Jeff Hamilton, who was your?
I don't know who that is.
Okay, who's your clinical coach?
It was Mark Robertson.
Mark Robertson, excuse me. Okay, I thought it was Jeff Hamilton. Okay, but you and Mark worked out something how you could get into a school or a process where you could determine some kind of need that existed, and that's how you got started on that one. Is that correct?
Yeah, I just chose one of the schools that I'm assigned to support.
Right. Okay. And basically, from all of you, you determine some process that wasn't working well, and it's usually something that needs to be measurable. So most at the elementary level would pick a mathematics or a reading program, some type of recovery system at the high school level. So you determine a felt a difficulty or a need at your specific school. Is that pretty much what you did?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, now the genesis of the APTEL is, okay, we, keep using the word we and your PLC, you've isolated your problem that you think you could have some input and make suggestions or changes to shorten the gap, narrow the gap, increase overall test scores. In my personal opinion, I would stay away from doing something gender or race specific. You just add more layer upon layer upon layer, and you only have 9 weeks. Do not open that can of worms. Get a group, get a class, do something, get some scores, figure out what the greatest gap is, and then you develop some type of program. Well, then you're going to start rubbing your head and going, okay, is there a program out there that I may use or develop to narrow the gap of a specific activity? And there is more than enough research out in the world for you to look at and sort of semi-replicate or use as a resource as to how you and your PLC will be able to deal with that. Now, don't get upset. Every research paper or project is not from the United States. There are other countries other than the U.S., and their research is just as good, if not better, on certain topics. There's a bunch that comes out of England as far as elementary school studies and elementary school work, but there's enough stuff once you determine what gap you want to work on in what subject area. Does any of that make sense, or am I just talking?
Can I ask you a question, Dr. Bowen?
Now, okay.
In the APTEL that we did, we at our school, I actually teach gender specific classes. So our largest gap was African American males in ELA.
Okay, but
because,
you're not trying to compare African American males to European American males, are you? Or are you just trying to raise the overall score of the African American males? Which is it?
Yes, sir. Trying to raise the overall score. Okay.
That's perfect. But when you start comparing race to race, gender to gender, it opens up another can of worms. But if you've taken a whole group and want to raise that band, that's an appropriate activity. Absolutely. Now, somewhere along in the APSL, I would think that your internship super clinical coach, what they're called now, they would have had some input into that. Yes, no, maybe.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes. He
okay.
Kind of steered that direction.
Okay. That's one of those unwritten jobs. And by the way, y'all did look at that email from Gerald Neal by way of Doug Urey telling you what the instructor's job was and your old clinical coach and what the new clinical coach will be. You did get that from me, didn't you?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. And you clicked on those things and read and heard and listened. All right. I'm glad they put that out. All right. So now you've got your problem, your situation. You want to start doing your research and keep it as narrow as possible within those 4 tasks of the APTEL. We on the same page, right? Shake, wave, or throw a rock in the air or something. Let me know you're with me. Don't.
Yes.
Yes.
Some of you people are holding your head doing this, and I'm going, oh, Lord, thank you for the thumb. Okay. And at least it wasn't a finger. Now, with that being said, okay, I just need to know that you and I are on the same page. You're working on your chapter questions. You're focusing on some things toward your APTEL, and now I wanted to make sure that you picked up on that city training. And I will apologize again. It makes no, I don't mind somebody telling Gardner Webb. It makes no sense whatsoever. You read a bunch of questions, you answer. If you don't make 75 or 80%, you get kicked out and you have to say, take the test over. And you keep doing it and doing it, doing it. Now, I don't want you to think I'm a rocket scientist, but I think in some of those modules, I did have to take them twice. I'll be the first to admit it. When you start talking about a factory in England that did this, and this back in the 1700s, and here's how it affected the workforce, and I'm going, what has this got to do with narrowing the gap of some group PLC working in math at the elementary school? I don't see the correlation, but before you scoff at this whole process, it is the universal accepted standard for getting into the field of research. Now, I realize you're not working with individual students or individual teachers and things like that, but this is the overall accepted standard across the world. City training. I think it's based out of Florida, but I won't swear to it. Okay. So I need to check your EVA scores and move the Zoom slots to 8 separate weeks so you will have a place to put that. But that opens up another can of worms. Out of chapter 1, they talked about your initial getting involved in research. Do you think, now we may separate with those people that are with us tonight, how many are at the elementary level? Now, Jeff, you did your research at the elementary level, or what was your school? Elementary?
Yeah, it was a K-5.
K-5, okay.
Yep.
How many are in an elementary setting? Just give me a hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How many at a middle or a high? Okay. Okay. So the question comes, and my guess is it's going to be different for the elementary people than the high school people. Do we use electronics more than we should? Have they become addicted to using electronics? Is it being abused as far as student learning is concerned? Just give me what you're thinking.
I think so. I mean, it's all they want to do is use Chromebooks
Okay.
constantly. They don't want to think. They want to go directly to the Chromebooks and Google the information instead of thinking and taking notes and studying.
Okay. And you've been using this process for how long?
We've been on the Chromebooks for about 2 or 3 years now.
Okay. And how, if it has, how has it affected their overall grades in your school? Can you tell a difference? Not dramatically?
Right.
Okay. What about at the high school level? Now, you're high school, right?
I'm middle school.
Okay. Who's high school? Stephanie, you a high school?
I'm middle.
Middle. So, go ahead, Stephanie.
I'm a reading teacher, and so we don't use the Chromebooks as often, but in the math program, I know they use Discovery Ed, which uses the Chromebooks a lot more. They have a class lesson, and then they'll have kind of a reteach lesson on the Chromebook, and then these labs that they have to complete. And that is because our scores in math have been decreasing every year since they implemented Common Core.
Okay. Now, should I be concerned that the majority of the 115 LEAs, school systems, if you would, across our state, use Discovery Ed? And how much money is that costing the state or your school system?
Well, not ELAs, but math. Only math uses them. And
No,
I'm sure it costs a lot because every classroom has a class set of Chromebooks.
Right. I
So
meant,
it's costing a lot of money.
when I used those 3 letters, I meant to say LEA, Local Education Agency.
Oh,
That's a district. But I think Discovery Ed is statewide. And somehow or another, that has to be a large contract across North Carolina. And the money that
Mhm.
we're paying for that. And do we actually see any results from Discovery Ed? I don't know.
I think it will take, won't it take a few years?
I would think
to-
some type of yes, it's usually some type of implementation. If you stay with it and stay on target, it takes about 3 years for some of the results to be seen, good or bad. But yeah, things don't just happen within one school year. That is a great question. It takes a while for those things to change. How, with things that are changing, and some school systems, and I don't know, Jeff's with CMS, and I'm somewhat familiar with what's happening down there, and the big deal that was pushed for pay for performance. What are some of the criteria that you think you should be evaluated on for your teaching performance that's in place? What research has someone found or used where they want to do that? And is that fair? Now, I know
Are you saying is it fair?
Is it fair? Now, think about it. You're in a high school that may have, and Jeff, I'm speaking about one in the northwest part of your district in Cornelius, as a matter of fact, where you've got probably 35 or 4,000 students at a high school. Oh yeah, they're like small cities. They're like small cities in Charlotte. And certain teachers who teach AP courses, if those students make a certain score, they get $50 a pop for each child that passes, up to $2,000. Now let's just suppose I'm across the hall from one and I teach 9th grade or 10th grade, whatever, biology, and there are no AP students in that group, and I'm working as hard as I can, and then this person across the hall, she's working hard, but she has a different type of student, and she's going to get a bonus at the end of the school year. Now, we are in the 2nd year of that 2-year pilot across the state. I don't know if it's going to stay or go, but I know of several who benefited from it after the 1st year. What do you think about that one? And y'all have something at the elementary, I think 3rd grade, where if they raise the test scores and something, you got a piece of the pie, didn't you? Yeah.
Hey, I liked it.
Yeah,
I'm 3rd grade, and I got the piece of the pie.
I hear you.
I'm not complaining.
Tell me the truth, Abby. Yours was probably a true heterogeneous grouping of students, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Okay. But at the high school level, when those kids sign up for an AP class, that milk or the butter has already risen to the top. So and they
pay for the test, so they want the grade too.
Well, yeah, counting as college credit. I mean, they do take it serious. The kids do. And that pilot, did that only affect 3rd grade reading scores? Okay. How about the 4th grade teacher or the 5th grade teacher?
I know.
I mean, did you get any vibe? Hold on 1 second. Did you get any vibes, Abby, from the other non-participants?
Oh yeah, and I even got I'm 3rd grade reading, and I have a partner that's 3rd grade math, and so she had the exact same students as I did, but so obviously she contributed some to it, and she got nothing.
Well, let's just hope they can look at that whole program and expand it, because issues like she was teaching the same kids, and she did contribute, I'm sure. There should have been something for her. Now, who had the question?
Well, this is Kevin McRae. We were in a situation for the past few years where they were giving $10,000 and $20,000 bonuses for the high value added data, and now it's gone. So what I see in terms of what you were saying about the bonuses attributed to what you're doing with the kids, I see it in terms of teachers aren't working as much as they used to work. They're not working as hard. So it was almost enticing because teachers, it seemed like they were giving 110% all the time because they know that they had a potential of getting this bonus money. So
Yeah.
I do agree that I think that some of the bonuses that we used to have that were school wide that they're taking away also. I think school wide is cool, but I do think that bonuses, they're good, and I guess unfortunately, sometimes our teammates may not be able to get what we get. I was fortunate enough that my teammate was getting it. I was actually up for the challenge because I wanted to get it too. So it's like a double-edged sword, this bonus thing, but it's kind of bad now because they taken that blanket up, from up under us.
Now,
And,
that was that was a local initiative, correct?
Yes, sir.
You're either in Winston or Guilford.
Yes, sir. I'm in Guilford County.
I do see. In my past life, I was involved with the 15 LEAs in the Piedmont Triad Central Region. So I sort of kept my fingers on the pulse, specifically Alamat, Burlington, Guilford, Winston-Salem, and then the smaller LEAs in the area. But yeah, Guilford was putting out some big bucks, but things were happening. They really were. I don't know, but that was local funds. That wasn't state money. So yeah, they started it up and ended it. So I really don't. Now, was that started up under Mo Green or before Mr. Green?
Before it started, it was the first payout was in 06.
Oh gosh. Okay.
Yeah, it's been going on for a minute.
Good. Well, in Winston, they called it Equity Plus, where you were paid a standard extra stipend to teach in schools that were hard to staff. Do what?
What'd you say?
Oh. Well, in Winston-Salem, they titled about maybe a fourth to a third of their schools as Equity Plus, and it was primarily based on free and reduced lunch or difficult schools to staff, and that's how they determined if you went there, you were going to get a stipend whether your students produced or not. Even the administrators got a piece of that action. But so I don't know.
In our county this year, Cumberland County, they did if you wanted to go to one of the lower graded schools, you had to sign a contract for 3 years and you could get a bonus.
Okay,
but
what
you
was
had
that?
to sign that 3-year contract. That's Cumberland County.
Cumberland in Fayetteville, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So, we need to do something different. And, I don't know where your vote is or with that, what's that crazy math program that they whipped out that sent all the parents up in an uproar? What was that called? About 5-6 years ago. Yep. Common Core. Is that it? Is
The
that
Common
still,
Core?
yeah, that's still going on?
Still going on.
Yes.
Well, if they hadn't rolled it out with an artillery shell, they had staged it, and number 2, did some training for the parents up front, I don't think there would have been that much backlash because parents were never prepared how to help their children. It wasn't English, and they didn't understand the whole process. But I think after it stuck and stayed and whatever, it's gotten better. Now back to where do you think, now none of you are a true high school teacher. Is that a true statement or not? Okay. So then it would be fair to ask, what do you think at the elementary level or the high school level we can do to prepare students and look at the research that will help increase the high school graduation rate? Now, please don't automatically go, Well, the lowest grade we can give at the high school level is a 50. We don't take attendance. They can come and go if they want to. It means that it needs to be something that has substantial impact. What do you think? What do you think the dropout rate or the passing rate actually is formed at the elementary level, at a certain grade level, at the middle school level? Where?
I can add to that. I teach 5th grade in Pender County, and I have a student at the age of 10. You can tell, you already know he's not going to graduate high school. I can sit with him, Elastic News or reading or math all day long, and it doesn't do anything. He's not interested. That's not what he wants out of life, and he's just not getting it, and that's a waste of time. He's the type of student who at this point should be on some type of track, such as learning a trade, learning how to manage your checkbook, learning how to get your credit score up. So I think at the age of 10 and 11, you can already tell that this is what I can do to benefit this child, and this is what is not helping him. And this child will repeat the grade, but it's not going to do him any good whatsoever. So at that age, I think you can tell.
I think it's somewhere in the upper elementary or the lower middle school grades, and especially if we've not. And I don't understand why, if I'm the only one saying or thinking this, if the reading and math programs at the elementary level in K1 or 2 are not established, it's like building the foundation for a house. It's not going to work. If you think you're going to do some reading recovery when they get to 9th or 10th grade, you're kidding yourself. We need to do a better job. I don't know why they pulled out those teaching assistants at the elementary level in grades K through 3. That but you need, if you don't understand this, I'm going to be one of the first ones to tell you, when the Department of Public Instruction issues the teaching slots, those funds for in the classroom, that's where it gets interesting. If they want to load your campus with assistant principals, lead teachers, reading coaches, math coaches versus teachers in the classroom, that's where that money goes. They make the decisions. And then, of course, if something happens, they all go to Raleigh. Well, they took out the TAs. We don't know what to do. And, you know, it bothers me that they know what happened, but they won't tell the parents or the community what they're doing with the funds for classroom and classroom teachers. I don't think there's anybody would disagree with me to think that if we don't do a better job in K3, so like Einstein said, if you keep doing the same thing the same way, you're going to get the same answer. Nothing's changed. What you want?
We did something this year.
Okay.
Go ahead.
No, you did.
I was just going to add to that, you saying with K3, as far as science in 5th grade, science is this big push. You got to teach science. They got to take the test.
Right.
You can't make miracles in 5th grade because they didn't get it K through 3.
Absolutely. That's
just one of the struggles that we deal with, which is what I put my PLC focused on last quarter with the APSL, was that science and the big gap.
And the only reason that we determined it was a gap was because it now became a tested area. Is that true?
Exactly. Yes.
Okay. Now, see, and if you think in my opinion, I think everything eventually will move toward a tested area. And that's not really fair. I worked harder when I was an elementary principal because every grade had an EOG of some type. Now, when I was a middle school principal, there were some tested areas, but not nearly as much at the elementary level. And I kept thinking, there's just something wrong here somewhere. But does that mean we now try to teach toward the test? Does your classroom follow the curriculum guides so that you can get close to teaching to the test. What do you think about that? I mean, y'all still have some type of standard course of study you follow, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mhm.
And please answer this question correctly. I hope, and by the way, when I record this video and I send you the link, we shouldn't say a lot of negative stuff about who you work for or with. Because if they get a hold of that link, they can see certain things. But I'm going to just tell you, I hope you don't work for a curriculum Nazi who comes into your classroom on Monday and then comes back on Wednesday and flips a couple of pages to see if you're where you're supposed to be on Wednesday. That's insane. How many times do I have to say that? That is insane. You cannot adjust with an ebb and flow group of kids how far you can move them in a day or in a class. Some might, I'm preaching to the choir. Some of them can move quick. Some of them are going to take their time and go slower. And you have no control over that. You absolutely have no control.
I'll be honest and say I've never finished the
where
calendar.
You're supposed to be on a certain day of the week.
Yes, I've never finished the year off.
As long as somebody is not dogging you in your observations in the pre or even the post, I would think that's okay. But there are some people who want every third grade teacher on that side of the hall to be on this page, this day, doing this activity. Now, you can smile and look at me if you want to, but some of you know what I'm talking about. And you've been into schools where there are people like that. That is an administrator. That is not someone who's developing curriculum and working with you as your curriculum leader. You know, you can get a trained monkey to do what I did back in the 80s and the 90s, you know, all doing this, checking this, whatever. But then things started evolving where you had to be the curriculum person involved with what is good for your school, your community, and that program. And it's not walking around with a clipboard doing silly stuff. No, that whole process, that went out with the 90s. The administrative process has evolved to a different level. Now, some people made the transition. Some people are still back in the 80s and the 90s. And hopefully you won't spend a lot of time working for those people. All right, so do we use any research in your classroom? Have you had a curriculum coach, math or now science or reading, who would come to you and say, based on the curriculum or the research that we've been given from the central office or DPI, this is a program that can make the greatest change or effect? Anybody had anything like that?
Well, we're already on like an entire reading program called American Reading Company. Okay. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but it's a lot of it's supposed to start in elementary school and work its way up. But the problem is it was introduced this year, and my seventh graders never got the elementary school part of it. You know, so like we're light years beyond them. And we're trying to get them to increase grade levels, reading grade levels, you know, by the end of the year, or get them up to grade level by the end of the year. It's a lot of taking me out of the classroom, although they want me to, you know, put it in there in the format. It's pretty scripted, but they don't want us to call it scripted, and it's
right. Like, it's
really weird. And it was a lot of money. I heard it was about $10 million, and they did provide us with books. We have a extremely large classroom library, you know, but we don't have like unit tests like we used to have in the county. Right. We have to create tests. I mean, it's.
So, Kevin, let me ask this: who determined that you would implement that program? Yeah, who decided y'all would start with seventh grade versus at a primary grade?
Well, I mean, you know, because I teach seventh grade, we pretty much we gave them reading tests like at the beginning of the year. Each child had an individual assessment, and we tried to see where they were most comfortable reading and comprehending. And you know, it was really almost estimating because it was a quick process. And most of the children, you know, based on the program, they graded at, you know, the second or third grade reading level when it
Okay, now
came to, you know,
Right.
they were really far away from.
Wasn't there some program maybe 10 years ago at the elementary level where you gave them a pre-reading inventory and you taught a lesson and you gave them a post-inventory? Wasn't there something like that?
Reading 3D?
There you go. And do we still do that one?
Yes.
Okay. In some LEAs you do. Okay. I always thought that made sense. Like the last thing out of chapter 1, and I hope you have some input on this one. What about sleep times? First of all, let me ask you this question. What drives the starting, stopping of the school day in every school system? There are two things. And only two things.
Buses.
Who said that?
Buses.
Is that you, Kevin?
Kevin McRae said buses.
Kevin hit the nail on the head. The buses, the number of buses and the number of drivers dictates who goes when and where. We don't have $1,000 or whatever dollars to buy a bus, much less we can't find that number of drivers. So we have to have a bus and a driver and do something creative to have 3 different operating times. Now, this conversation is going somewhere. Those drivers want to drive enough per day to make it a position where they get benefits. That makes sense. But at the same time, that drives the school system. So you got elementary either starting earlier or later, middle, earlier or later, and then high school. Now, the question now is, since we know what drives the schedules, the number of buses and drivers, I mean, in a perfect world, you would have had every driver for every bus for every school, and the elementary could start at 8 or 8:30 and give them enough time to sleep and rest. The middle could do the same in the high school. Do you think sleep has a impact on a high school student, and do you think there should be some research out on that?
Oh, Lord.
Absolutely. Kevin, what time do the high schools generally start in Guilford?
I'm assuming they probably start we start at 7:55, so they're probably anywhere between 8:30, maybe
8:45. Yeah, you about right. 8:30, 8:45.
There you go.
Well, I know in Wake County they start around 7:25, and then Franklin County we're around 7:45.
Okay. Now, I really would love to see the research that shows high school kids need to go to school and be ready to learn and not fall asleep at 7:30 in the morning.
Aren't they starting to do research on that?
I'm sure there's.
I've seen a lot recently.
Well, I know that for us, my school, we're the earliest school in the county, and we have K through 5, and they coming through the door at 6:55.
Oh, Lord. And that's elementary kids.
That is K5, 6:55. And that is way too early.
You're preaching to the choir. And y'all realize.
And it is because of buses.
It is.
We share buses with the middle school that's next door to us and the high school and the same drivers. That is exactly why.
So you got this kid who's not getting at least 6 or 8 hours a night sleeping, comes to high school, who knows what, and you can look at them. Do you think there could be a correlation between time of day school starts, how much sleep they've had, and their academic performance at a high school level? My guess would be if you Googled those 3 components, hours of sleep, time of school day, and academic performance, there should be something out there that will tell you that. And my guess is it does affect them. They're not ready to wake up. They're not ready to wake up and learn.
Dr. Bowman.
Yes.
I was going to say, I worked at a program. I'm at Guilford County, and I worked at a program called High School Ahead, and we took overage middle schoolers. We taught them 8th grade, and their schedule was from 10 to 4:30. And we kept them for 1 year. They skipped 7th grade. They completed 6th grade. They get skipped from 7. We taught them 8th grade curriculum. And before we went to Common Core, we was probably at a 92% rate with math and ELA. So that time was wonderful.
Yeah,
I mean, the kids was up, they was awake. It was a longer day, but I mean, because they went to 4:30, but it was a lot of productive happening.
Now, I know some of you sport enthusiasts are not going to like this statement, but you also have to stay competitive within your area. If your people do not get out and go to athletics at a certain time, similar to those around you, that's going to create a problem. Keep it. And if you don't think high school athletics, that's sort of important, and that drives a lot of decisions. When can we leave? Where we got to go to compete? What size school are we competing against? And believe it or not, even at the high school level, that's another factor that has to be looked at. But I agree with you. I think and what was the name of that program in Guilford where they hopped a grade?
It was called High School Ahead.
High School Ahead.
They actually shut it down. This will be the last year. It went for 11 years.
They had a similar program in Winston called LEAP, learning something, and what they came in as 6th graders, and they left as 8th graders, and they did hop the 7th grade and had a blended curriculum of the 4 major subjects. They came after school started, and they left later, like you described in Guilford. Now, what school are you at, Nicole?
I work at Allen Middle School with Mr. McCray. We teammates, to be exact.
Okay.
We teach all boys.
Y'all have groups of males and females studying separately?
Yes, on the 7th grade, we have an all boys team, we have an all girls team, and then we have a co-ed team.
Okay, and I don't mean to put you two on the spot, but can you give me some feedback as to how that's going?
I love it. I've been doing it for 3 years. Me and McCray been doing it for 3 years. I teach boys better than I teach girls. I think you got to know yourself.
Yes.
I'm a sports person. I'm a coach. So it works out. I mean, it's just, I think the first year they gave us the opportunity to do it, we didn't have to deal with EC and 504s, and that made a big difference.
Okay.
So the second year, they threw everything at us, 504, IEPs, whatever. So that was a little interesting, you know. If I had a choice, my problem would be when you start mixing. Now we're doing resource whole class, and we're doing inclusion. Okay. That's a little rough when it's a whole class full of them in the classroom. It's a little interesting.
But you don't see a lot of competitiveness. You know how guys, especially at the middle school level, want to act out and show off for a girl. You don't. That stuff.
No, we don't have that.
Okay. Well,
right. We can discipline them a little bit differently than we could if we had a female in there that they may get embarrassed by. I mean, my children, my students, they don't really care about making mistakes when they read. They want to read now. Like, you know, it's cool because of the environment is, we all.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
It's almost like it's judgment free.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I've heard some mixed reviews, but most of it leans toward that it's a good thing. If the parents like it and the kids really like it, then you should have a little bit, like you said, all male or all female, and then a mixed group, something like that.
But we don't have the freedom to do what we want to do. Like, you know what I'm saying? We got to jump through a lot of loopholes. I remember the first year we wanted to, after EOGs, we had a lesson plan about when the game stood still and was trying to teach them character education. Right. At our school, we can't watch movies. You know what I'm saying? And we wrote up a plan and everything about, like, you know, what we would do. and it was still turned down. So like, even though we teach all boys, we really don't have the leeway to say that it's going to be how we want it to be. You know, we still have to jump those loopholes.
Well, keep in mind, you're in a layered situation with a zone superintendent that reports to the superintendent.
Right.
And I can see how that it would be difficult to get things moved through versus at a smaller school system than like a Guilford or a Winston or even a Charlotte. Okay, those were the highlights out of chapter 1. And now out of 2, do you think, now, first of all, does anybody disagree with the fact of a kindergartner coming to school without any pre-kindergarten experience, either in a pre-K or a Head Start or some kind of child care development that has them in their social development, their academic development, things like that? Do you think that makes a difference to a kid in kindergarten as they go through being around other kids and not having their way? If they're an only child or they are a group of 2 or 3 in a family? I mean, my heart goes out for those pre-K teachers. They're given usually a group of 15 to 20, and they come to school with backgrounds from literally A to Z. What do you think about that? And you may have children of your own that have gone through that kindergarten experience. And my guess would be, since you are where you are, they went to school with some skills in their pockets. They didn't go in lacking.
Well, my thing is that it's changed. When I went to kindergarten, it was all about building the social skills. You had centers, and you played grocery store, and you played with puzzles. And now it's academics right away.
It is.
So I think we're missing that piece, and if pre-K adds that piece, then I'm all for it. But I still think we start too early.
Well, I was going to say none of my 2 kids were not eligible to go to pre-K because they knew too much. So I'm kind of a parent that was like, I wanted them to go, but they claimed they knew too much, so they didn't get to go.
Okay, so they just started kindergarten, was their first grade of entry.
Yes.
Okay. Any others? So how they start you in the door with any kind of a pre-K or Head Start or whatever exposure, that does make a difference. I think Stephanie hit the nail on the head. Originally, it was hopping from center to centers, taking your little, not a paper clip, but a clothespin, and you would go to one center to another, and the teacher would be checking this and checking that. But now, literally, it's almost like a first grade classroom where it's more academic driven, and they may not be getting true social skill development that most of them probably could use. What about, I did ask you, it really came out of chapter 2, teaching to the test. And you can admit to it or not, but let's just look up and look away from the camera. You know from last year's test, and my guess is some of you have got some copies of some old tests, maybe, but you know what the curriculum is, so you try to cover as much material where you may not be able to go vertical, but you're spending your time doing horizontal work, so you can cover as much as possible before that test comes out. Is that where we're headed, or what we are all about? Teaching toward the test? I mean, you have a scripted road of academics that you have to follow. There probably is very little, if any, leeway for you to mess with, is there?
I think there was an article that had recently come out. It was a man, it was either a book or an article that said he teaches to the test and is proud of it.
Okay.
And I think he was speaking in terms of teaching the students skills that are needed in order to pass these tests now, because that's what's going to be required. to go into college and then to go on in life.
Stephanie, do you think it's more important to teach how to process information and how to think on your own and deal with it that way versus what we did in the 60s and 70s, that you learned all the presidents and all this silly stuff and all this other stuff that meant nothing? I mean,
my philosophy is we need to teach thinkers.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I don't think students, you mentioned that they just want to give me the work, let me do it and turn it in. Give me the work, let me do it, turn it in. They don't want to be taught how to stop and think and how to process a problem, which let's think in terms of going to college or a trade school or going to work. How does that work out if they're not taught how to think? Think about that.
I can add something to that. I feel like even the kids know at this point that teachers have to get them ready for that test, and that's the main goal.
Right.
When we're practicing and we're going over certain questions and we get to a question, the kids will get upset. And they're like, but Miss King, you did not tell us that. You didn't teach us that. And so they're like, but if you didn't tell me, then how am I supposed to know? So they're not thinking and they're not using their skills to know, okay, she didn't tell me that, but I can do some reasoning and I can figure it out.
Right.
So it's almost doing the opposite of what we really want to do because they're going backwards. And they're just, if you didn't tell me, I don't know.
How about this question? My guess is if I've kept up with everything, y'all if you're at the elementary level or middle school, you've already had your first round of end-of-grade testing? Yes or no?
We're starting. Okay.
Okay.
We've had the final exams, but now we're starting tomorrow, the end of grade test.
Okay. If you think you're nervous and uptight, I want you to stop and close your eyes and think about your building administrators, the principal and the assistant principal. They are so afraid there'll be a fight, there'll be a fire drill, or something that will happen that will create chaos for that day. Because if there's a fight at 8:30 as they're coming into school, do you think if the commotion and the wound upness, if that's such a word, is going to be over at 9? No. They'll be buzzing about that all day long till they get on the bus. They would, an administrator, they are walking around on pins and needles till that end of grade testing is completed. And I'm not talking about a testing irregularity. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about an event in your building that can turn things upside down in a second. So they are hoping that you can do whatever you can do to keep everything calm, teach them how to breathe, relax, whatever, and get through this next 2 or 3 days. Now, after you do your first round of EOGs, is there like a 4 or 5 day window where you're getting the results back and you're prepping those kids who have to take it again to pass? Is that still in existence? No, y'all cut that out. You get one shot, one bite at the apple, and that's it.
And they'll go to summer school.
Our school has a second test. They're allowed to do remediation, and they take another round of tests at the end of the school year.
Okay, so they take it once, then they go into like something called the red zone, and then they get to take it again. Okay.
Well, at my school, you take it the first time. If you get a 1 or a 2, then you go to summer school. But in the end, it's parent choice. So they don't have to go to summer school.
And the choice is,
summer school, they'll take it again.
Okay, if they don't go to summer school, they're retained?
Absolutely not.
Oh. Hold up.
That would be nice, but no.
Paula, I think I missed that email. So let me make sure I thought I heard you.
Okay.
If they make a 1 or a 2 and they do not elect to go to summer school, they're still going to move on up.
Yeah, there's nothing that says we can hold you back. if you get a 1 or a 2 and you don't go to summer school. It is still a parent choice. We make it come off to them at this point that if you don't, you got to go to summer school, you know, but no, they don't.
Okay.
Right, because we don't even have summer. I'm sorry.
You don't have summer school. Okay. Well,
we do not have summer.
Okay, you don't have summer school. Well, here, how about this? First of all, do you have a bunch of teachers during the summer knocking the door down to work? No.
We got summer school. We offer summer school at our school.
Okay. And do you have enough teachers who want to work?
They paying them. They going to work.
Okay. Well, that's a tough situation. And then the last thing, I want you to think about, everybody has a different activity as to what you're working on. And Jeff, yours will be an easy one. What in your APTEL, if you can say it in 1 or 2 sentences, tell me what your research proposal is or was. Think about that for a second. One of you is going to say, I want to increase the rate of passing reading scores for African American males. Is that with you?
Yes, sir.
That kind of stuff, or doing something with mathematics, or doing something in reading. You need to keep, and every time you and your PLC meet, that's the one thing you should keep in the back of your mind. What was my research question, and what are we doing to answer that research question? Now, obviously, you've learned how to use the library at Gardner-Webb using either ERIC or there are 2 or 3 others. The question is how you put up your input for questions and how much feedback do you get, whether it's what type of research question you're doing or what you're actually looking at, whether it's qualitative or quantitative. I mean, you would think using those 2 words, it's fairly simple. Qualitative has a lot of input from you as the researcher because it determines quality. Quantitative is just looking at numbers. We did an increase from 85% to 89%. It's hard to jiggle the numbers if it's a quantitative research project. You're just looking at numbers. So keep those 2 phrases in mind as you go down that path to study and do what you're doing with your research project. Qualitative and quantitative. Okay.
I have a question about that really quick.
Go right ahead.
Does it have to be completely different than our APSL? Because this seems very similar.
It will be similar.
Okay, does it have to, can I like focus on what I was already doing in my APSL?
Okay, I'm probably going to get spanked for answering this because I'm not supposed to talk about that. But if I were going to answer it and get spanked, I'd say it's okay.
Okay.
I want you to understand all 5 of those parts are supposed to be connected.
Mm-hmm.
You don't do one over here and then do something off the grid over here. Everything is supposed to be linked together. Now, I don't know if I
really repetitive.
Do what?
It just seems super repetitive.
It does. It does. And when you start, okay, they haven't told you this, but let's suppose you wrote what you wrote for your APSL, and now you're getting ready to write what you're going to write for your APTEL. You're going to use the same phrases, the same sentences, and the same stuff. And then at the end of semester 5, you're going to blend all 5 of those documents into one. And it's almost repetition, repetition, repetition. Don't freak out, but that's just the way it's going to turn out. And that's okay. That's okay. But how you address your research question, if you can make it in 1 or 2 sentences, and then determine if you're going to raise numbers. I mean, trying to increase something with a qualitative response is going to be difficult. But the quantitative, which is covered very specifically in Chapter 2, is what you're basically doing. Once you complete your master's, and you move on, and I don't know if you've figured this out, if every sitting administrator in North Carolina, first of all, do we have enough teachers in this state to work?
No.
No. Okay.
No.
Keep in mind, do we have enough if they started retiring, do you think we would have enough to fill that void?
No.
So the opportunities for advancement are great. Now, you may not move up exactly in your schools. First of all, I don't know that you'd want to move up for advancement in your own school, but possibly in your district as an assistant principal, or sometimes if you go to a small school system, an LEA, things happen different. I know of some sitting assistant principals who are still working on their administrative certificate. Do you want me to repeat that one? Certainly.
I like that.
Well, I'm telling you, it's going on. There are certain LEAs that require you to have been to graduate and submitted your paperwork for your license before you get into the interview process. Some LEAs, if you're halfway through a semester and it's the last one, they'll offer you a position. Now, Jeff is in a situation where you have to, he's got about 5 hoops to hop through. Now, Jeff, you snap me if I'm wrong. He's got about 5 hoops to hop through to get into the candidate pool before you can be considered for an interview. I mean, you just don't get a degree and make an application. You go through a step-by-step process, and it's real competitive in CMS, I'm sure, just like it is in Guilford. But the smaller LEAs, there's not a real drawing card, and by that I mean money, that will pull you in that direction. There are just some places in this state that people won't go to work. That's just the way it is. But you'll get a job. There's no doubt about that. And the true learning process, if you don't pick it up in this hands-on experience about what you would do, think about it. You're a new principal. The superintendent has told you, and first of all, you've already done your interview by looking at the newspaper and the test scores, the teacher working conditions and the survey and the school report card. You have already done your homework to see, okay, what's this school all about? What kind of problems am I going to run into? What kind of teacher turnover has been in existence the last 2 or 3 years? You're going to do your homework before you apply. And then next nugget of knowledge is, let's suppose you apply and you're given a principalship. The superintendent, your zone or the real superintendent, they will give you your homework assignment. I want you to go in there within 1 semester and do this. I want you to do this. I want you to do this. You just won't go in there and be all willy-nilly and stand out at the bus lot waving to the kids coming in and smile at the parents. It's not all about that. You're going to end up looking at what you're doing now and how you would apply that skill to what you would do in your first position. There is a direct correlation between this 5-semester process and your first job. Absolutely. It used to be you took a course, you read a book, you didn't do anything else, and you took a test on a blue book. Well, that went out in the 80s. Now, most school systems are going in the direction of, okay, where'd you go to school? What did you do? And you'll talk about your PLC work and your project and the results. That's one of the good things about it. Okay, let me make sure I got my questions covered. We'll check on your EVA scores to make sure that they're there. If not, I'll put them there. And then I'm going to move the Zoom and the written, those 8 parts where you put up, I'll add those on to 1 per week at the very end of the grading spectrum. And don't forget, and don't blame me for this one, but don't forget to go ahead and do, and Jeff, I'm going to send this out to all of you. Everyone, your city training is worth 3 years. So if you've done one, it's still good. If you haven't done one, you're going to need to read those silly questions and answer those silly answers till you get a passing grade of, it's either 75 or 80%. And yes, Kevin, you can take it as many times as you want. It doesn't kick you out like some things. But just keep in mind, about the second or third time, they're going to give you a different set of questions. They'll switch them around and stuff like that. So pay attention as you're answering those things. And if you have two computers or if you have a split screen, put the paragraph to your left and the answer sheet on the right, and that's the best way to do it. So you can take it at one time. But there are no limits to what you can do. I apologize for that in advance and make sure that you know I said that. I had nothing to do with that one. It's just like that EVA. The only thing that, what was the stuff? Y'all were supposed to take a Blackboard test. Okay. You took that in 601, didn't you? Shake your head up and down. Why would you take the same test twice? The only thing you take twice is your driver's license every 8 or 12 years or whatever that is. That's it. You don't need that Blackboard test twice. The EVA is every semester that links you to enrolling, and then the silly thing I'm asking you to do is part 2, week 2's assignment is that city training. Unless something happens, I'll come out with some notes for chapter 3 and 4. You people who have your books, keep working, answering your questions, and I'll see you next Tuesday at about 7:30. Questions?
All right.
Okay, guys. I will post this video sometime tonight after it processes. All right. Bye there.